to everyone. So I've just prepared a short slide presentation with a bit of information about the Corner Shop project. So there you see a picture of our data collector in Mali at work, and a logo of our partner, MicroSafe Consulting, who I'm going to speak a bit more about in the next slide. So the Corner Shop project was conceptualized at a time when the COVID-19 pandemic had started to unfold. What we really wanted to do was to capture how this pandemic would affect small businesses, especially focusing on corner shops, because these are the hub of communities. They could tell us a lot of information about the pandemic and its effects. So we decided to go with the corner shops to interview them weekly using the financial diaries methodology, where we capture their incomes, expenses, savings, loans, demand and supply issues, price fluctuations, and their COVID-19 experiences. So we started this project in Africa in April 2020, and have since been joined by MicroSafe Consulting and the Rishipara Financial Diaries, who are collecting data in Asian countries. So those are the numbers of the respective countries we are collecting data from in terms of how many shops we're tracking and the countries we're working in. Where as Lyft were responsible for data collection in Uganda, where we have 39 shops being tracked, in Nigeria, where we have 6 shops being tracked, in Zimbabwe, where we have 18, in Senegal, where we have 14, and most recently in Mali, where we started this past January, where we have 18 shops. And then our partners, MSC, being responsible for India and Indonesia, where they have 25 corner shops that they track in each of those countries, as well as in Bangladesh, where we have the Rishipara Financial Diaries, where they are following 5 different shops. So in terms of the numbers and what we're trying to do, that's that. And then to our main objectives, it's really to learn how the different countries' corner shops go through the COVID-19 situation and what may have influenced the different outcomes. For example, you find that in some countries, some shops are closing down, some shops are doing very well, some shops' incomes may have declined, some may have gone up, and so on. So we really wanted to see how all those different businesses would go through this pandemic. Secondly, to assess the options for supporting the recovery of SMEs after the pandemic, to see how they could bounce back and recover from all of this, and try to find ways in which you could play a part in that recovery. Also to learn how financial diaries may help corner shops in their business and help them access financial services. So this is really critical for them to be able to keep their financial records properly. We're helping them with that through the use of Finbit, and them having that sort of history of financial records that might be able to help them to access financial services. Also to use the panel of micro businesses to test policy hypotheses. So we have all these different corner shops that we're working with, who form this group that, we could act as a group where we can test different policies and how they might work before they're employed at a larger scale. So we have this panel already present, which we're working with and can test all these different theories that, different countries are coming up with, or financial service providers are coming up with, and so on. Also to assess the role of digital finance and platforms in corner shops. So obviously this is really important for us as a financial technology company, where we want to see how, whether there's been a shift in the use of digital finance throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, where you'd expect it to go up, or if it hasn't, or if it's gone down. So we're trying to get the evidence to see how such issues are playing out during the pandemic. Also, to develop toolkits on how to conduct multi-country technology-driven virtual research studies and how to analyze financial diaries data. So, obviously we're doing this, we started doing all this research right in the middle of the pandemic, or at the very start for some countries. And most of this was done during really tight lockdowns. And so we have a lot of experience now on how to conduct this type of research under those circumstances, and also how to analyze all this different data that is coming in. So those were really the main objectives in terms of, what this project set out to do. And so, we're already learning quite a lot about small businesses and how they've responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. And not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but also, in general, how are small businesses doing, what do they need, and so on. So we've learned a lot about the effects of COVID-19 and lockdowns on the small businesses we're working with, resilience and coping, how they're doing, how they're managing to go through the pandemic, the sorts of innovation they're doing to help them go through this pandemic, and ways that businesses can recover from this COVID-19 disruption that has faced them. So we're already learning a lot about all these different things, and have on our website already different articles and stories and blogs that explain and show some of these things that we're learning already. So I'll share that link to the website for everyone to be able to see some of the things that we're already learning. So for our next steps with this project, we're really trying hard to fundraise for it. So we brought on the different partners such as MSC to come in, other organizations, so that is a collaborative effort, and we can try to reach out to as many donors as we can to get this project funded. So what we'd ideally want to do in the future is to add more countries into this project, and also increase our samples per country. For example, right now we've got, some countries with 14, some with 18, some with 25, and those samples are not really representative enough of, the situation on the ground in the individual countries. So we really want to get a larger samples going in the different countries if we get additional funding. Also expand the areas of inquiry and focus on other different aspects that we may not be capturing already. We could go into finding out more about access to finance, access to government schemes, gender-specific issues, and a whole lot of other things that are probably now outside of our inquiry, or where we would want to go a bit deeper in learning. And also seeking funding partners to develop experimental approaches to test solutions and measure impact. So we'll definitely want to take a more active role in addition to the research, to see how all these different businesses we work with can grow. What do they need? Can we develop any approaches and any new solutions that are already available, to see how these small businesses can be helped to grow, and also just test all the different solutions that are available to us and whether they have an impact or not. And also at the moment, we're seeking project partners, organizations that may wish to conduct the study on their own specific samples, or include small retail firms that an organization is training or is providing advice to. and also seeking partners in the financial services world, particularly for lending to our current sample, and to creating an additional sample where a financial service provider may be working. So there's the part where we're doing all the research, and the part where we really also want to do direct interventions and see how we can influence how these different businesses recover from COVID-19. So, in starting this project and in conducting it, we're obviously facing several challenges. And I'm sure, some of these challenges the other teams may be familiar with too, where, in terms of issues like data collection, where you're working with a lot of data collectors in different countries. And in some instances, some may be not as good as others, and trying to keep, all the data collectors motivated. But for me, it also speaks to, how you hire researchers, data collectors, and the sort of qualities you look for in them, so that, your job later on is easier to motivate them to provide consistently good quality data on time. So there's that aspect where, you're working with a whole lot of different data collectors in many different places, and you just have to have a way to motivate them. So that's been hard. And as well as the motivation of respondents, where, sometimes they may feel it's not enough that, Lyft is providing this application that could be useful for them, where, they're also really expecting other direct interventions to sort of happen for them. So I think that's also a huge challenge, in terms of, do you pay respondents? Do you just motivate them with the abilities of the application only, or just what do you do to try and motivate them? So these are some of the areas that I'm hoping I can get input from the rest of the team on how, they feel about these areas. And of course, working within COVID-19 regulations, that was really challenging, where, you're working with a team that you don't get to physically meet with, or travel to the different shops and interact a lot more closely and as much as you might wish to with the different businesses and respondents you're working with. So that's been really hard to do, where, we have had to just find ways to do this over the phone, using WhatsApp, using Telegram, to try and get all the data that we need without exposing ourselves to COVID-19. And of course, fundraising for the project. So that's also difficult, which also speaks to, motivation of respondents. We can't really pay them that much because the project is not yet funded. So those are some of the challenges we face. I'm going to stop there.